Did you know that 90% of the world's millionaires has a substantial holding in real estate? What does that mean to you? Bottom line is, if you're not investing in real estate, you're not where the majority of the millionaires are, and you're not on a path to wealth. But don't worry, I'm here to help. My name is Jerome D, and I have a substantial portfolio in real estate, and I've been in the business for over 25 years. And I want to share with you my tips, my tools, the tricks that I've learned in my 25 years of experience. So you're tuning in to the Black Money Tree Masterclass. In course number 3, we're gonna deal with managing the contractor, finding the right contractors. I found that there are 3 basic types of contractors, and you gotta be able to recognize them, and you gotta know how to negotiate with them. Then you need to also know what repairs to do when, and that's what this course is about. But before we get into today's lesson, be sure to click the link, subscribe, and share this with someone else. And remember, nothing, absolutely nothing takes the place of having a personal coach, someone that you can pick up the phone and ask a question to. There's a link in the bio. If you'd like to book a call, feel free to do so, and I'll be your personal coach. Now, enjoy today's lesson. Welcome to the Black Money Tree Masterclass, Contractors and Construction. My name is Jerome D, and I'm the creator and founder of the Black Money Tree Wealth Development System. And I'm so excited that you're tuning in today, and I'm really excited about the Black Money Tree Wealth Development System. I truly believe that we are on the cusp of changing the destiny of Black Americans across this country. You know, last year was a tumultuous year for Black people. You had the death of George Floyd. You had Ahmaud Arbery. When you look at many of the things that's happening within the Black community, Black men being shot down, look at the health disparities. Sometimes it feels like we're somewhat powerless to make a change. And while marching and while posting is very significant to make your voice heard, there has to be substantive plans and actions that's going to help to change our own community. We can't sit and wait for someone else to do anything for us. And that was why we birthed the Black Money Tree Wealth Development System. Our goal is to help to build and create wealth within Black communities. I believe that your decision making is different when you have money in your pocket. I believe that you're in a better position to help others when you have money in your pocket. So our goal is to help you build wealth so that you could then build your community. Now, the 2 areas that we focus on in the Black Money Tree Wealth Development System is real estate investment and entrepreneurship. So this class is about contractors and construction. Now, I have been in real estate investing for almost 25 years now. And I believe that the best way to build wealth in real estate is to create value. So what does that mean? You're buying properties at a reduced value because they need a little bit of work. You do that work, and not only does it provide a cash flow for you, so we teach long-term investments as opposed to flipping. Also remember, I always say this, my dad always said, there's more than one way to skin a cat. The principles and philosophies of the Black Money Tree are based upon my experiences, which is based upon my needs. The first masterclass, which is available at bearealestateinvestor.com, is complimentary. Make sure you check it out. I talk about the motive. You have to know what is the motive behind your motivation. So my motive was based upon the fact that I was an entrepreneur, that I had a wife, I had 4 kids, and I realized that many times when my business wasn't producing the way it needed to be, I still had bills to pay in my household, and sometimes I had to take money that probably should have been reinvested in the business in order to take care of my household, and then it hindered my business's ability to produce. So therefore, my primary motive was to have passive streams of income that covered my base bills, that allowed me to freelance a little bit more, that allowed me to allow my businesses to grow. Robert Kiyosaki calls it the rat race. Once I got my real estate and I was out the rat race, I began became a lot freer to build and grow and do the things that I needed to do. So today we're going to talk about contractors and construction, because if you're buying properties, you're going to have to learn how to deal with these contractors. You're going to have to learn what repairs to do, when to do them, in order to build a profitable real estate portfolio. So things we're going to be going over today is there are 5 things. First off, we're going to define what a contractor is, okay? So everything we do at the Black Money Tree, it's something for everyone. The people that are just starting out or those that are established. So that may sound elementary, but some people may not know what a contractor is. So what is a contractor? We're going to talk about the 2 types of contractors. Then we're also going to talk about the most important trait of a contractor. And then we're going to define when is the job done right? What is the job done right? And then lastly, we're going to talk about which repairs to do and when. Once again, these are all based upon my personal beliefs and philosophies. If you want to understand more about my motives and my motivations, go to bearealestateinvestor.com. It's a free masterclass there, and you can kind of understand why I did what I did. You can compare it to your personal situations and determine if my path aligns with yours, or make the proper tweaks that you think is necessary. So, first off, what is a contractor? A contractor, I'm going to simplify. There's probably some type of technical term, but I'm just going to say it's the person that's going to be doing the work on your property. You tend to think of trades being electrical, plumbing, framing. You might have your mason, the person that's doing the contracting or the concrete or whatnot. Or you can have your general construction guys, the guys that just do sheetrock, painting, maybe putting in floors. But the contractor, in essence, are the individuals that are going to be doing the work on the houses. Now, before we go into the 2 types of contractors, let me just say this. Business is about making money. Contractors are in business, so their goal is to make money. Okay, nothing wrong with that. Now, you're in the real estate investment business. Your goal is to make money. So there's obviously gonna sometimes be a little bit of a conflict. They trying to make money, you trying to make money. But my personal philosophy and belief that if you're going to be a success in business, you have to create win-win relationships where everybody makes money. So I say that to say, some people, I know a guy, he's from up north, and he thinks everybody's trying to get over on him. So if he pays $1,000 for something and finds out someone else paid $9.95, he feels like, oh man, they screwed me. He got over on me. To me, I don't look at it that way. My goal is also, now part of the reason, once again, I always talk about the motive. I have moved from doing work on my houses, and now I build houses. I also do work on other people's houses. So I have to keep working relationships with these contractors, because I want them to be looking for my phone call, to know that they're going to put some money in their pocket so that I don't lose money over here. Now, if you're doing one-off projects here and there, perhaps you got to be a little bit more hard-nosed. But this is kind of my perspective and my way of looking at it. But just know, you're trying to make money, they're trying to make money. But at the end of the day, you got to come to a happy medium so that you both can win. So the first type of contractor, there are 2 types of contractors actually I'm going to talk about. First one is what I call your Larry Lowball. So the next one is the Henry High Dollar. So let's talk about the characteristics of each and how to deal with each. So let's talk about Larry Lowball. Larry tends to provide a very inexpensive bid. However, his overall goal is to get the job and increase the price later. Okay, so is that wrong? Maybe. Is it? But who knows? It depends on their intentions. But the goal is for you to understand the way they operate. So in real estate and in construction, there's tons of ways to do different things. If you ask, I'll give you an example. One of the first properties I work with, I said I need a new roof. The lady says, I'll replace your shingles. Can't remember the price, but let's say it was $2,000. That was very cheap compared to the other bids that I had. She was a Larry Lowball. The other bids were $3,500, $4,000. I didn't know anything about construction. So what happened? I signed the contract with her. Immediately she gets on the roof and says, oh man, the wood under here, the plywood is rotten. Oh man, we got to replace these rafters. So now her price goes from $2,000 to $3,200. It was closer to what the others were. Now, but let's look at it. The reality is this. If she would have told me $3,500, she would have been grouped in with all the other guys. So her strategy was to give me a low price to get me excited, so I would go with her bid, and then increase the price. Now, you could argue with the ethics of it, but the reality is I needed to have that wood replaced, and the price was probably going to be closer to $3,000. That was just her sales tactic. Now, you have some guys that are going to give you that low bid, and they're going to do exactly what you told them to do. They're going to replace your shingles and leave that rotten wood. But, so now the question is, what would you prefer? Would you prefer that contractor not to tell you that the wood was rotten and increase your price? Or would you prefer them to just put the shingles down? So just understand that when you are contracting, remember, I work both sides. I've worked with the contractor. I've been screwed by contractors. I've argued and had to get in almost physical altercations with contractors at times. But I've also been the contractor that's told the client a certain price, get in the project, and understand that the parameters have changed. And now my alternative is lose money or go back to the client and tell them I'm going to have to increase the price. So once again, the goal is not to pose any of these types of contractors as bad people, but just to help you to understand the way the contract is working. They're in business to make money. So some of them, once again, they're giving you that low price just to get the deal, to know that they're going to increase your price. Some of them going to give you a low bid, hope that you don't know anything and don't hold them accountable so they can kind of do a cut rate job. Now, to me, that's kind of shady. That's unethical. But just understand that's kind of a technique that many of these contractors will use. But for me, I'm driven not by emotion. I'm driven. So if the contractor tells me $2,000 and I knew that my budget was $3,000, I'm thinking, oh man, I'm gonna win. But my logical mind says, you've been down this road before. You know that $2,000 is probably gonna end up back at the $3,000. Now, if my budget is $3,000 and it ends at $22,000, $25,000, I feel like I've won. So don't be driven by emotion just because they say $2,000 and it ends up $2,300. Look at your overall budget, but also you gotta understand the construction business. Because sometimes what they're going to tell you needs to be done really needs to be done. Another example, and then we'll move on to the next one. Most of my houses are 40, 50 years old. So if someone says they're going to replace a toilet, they can replace that toilet for $300, $400. But guess what? That toilet connects to the water lines. It has screws that holds it down. And over 40 years, they're probably rusted. So when they start taking those things off, it's very likely that a line may break, a screw may break, something, the angle stop may break. What do you want that contractor to do? Come back and tell you, hey, I'm going to have to buy this, that, and the other. It's going to be another $150. Now, if you say, nope, that's too much. You told me $300. It's going to be $300. They will likely put it back together, but 2-3 weeks later, you're going to start having some leaking. I would rather have them tell me the price up front, pay that price, and then you don't have more problems in the long run. That's just kind of my way of looking at it. Now you can say they are the professional. They should know. They should have communicated that up front. And yes, they should have. But many of them know if they tell you all the things that it's going to entail, there's competition out there that's going to give you a cut rate job at a lower price, and you're going to go to them. And then what happens when you realize that contractor is doing a crappy job, you're going to call the other one back, and now you're going to want a discount from them because you done spent money over here, and now you got to spend it over there. So bottom line, I'm not saying there's a right or wrong, but you kind of got to understand the dynamics of what's going on in this contractor business. The next contractor is High Dollar Henry. So Henry tends to have a higher price. He tends to have more professional marketing. This is the guy that's going to have a big van with the wrap on it. He's going to have polo shirts with his logo. He's going to send you digital logos. He tends to be licensed. He tends to be bonded. And ultimately, he's trying to make enough money. Pretty much any contractor should be, but this one is a little bit more professional. So he's cognizant of his numbers. He knows what it's going to take to do the job. So he's trying to make sure he pays his workers and puts money in his pocket. His price is probably going to be higher. And he's not as concerned about getting every job because he understands that not all money is good. Now, there is a value in high dollar Henrys. They tend to be more accountable. So a month from now, because they have a website, because they're licensed, because they're bonded, you don't have to be concerned that they're going to disappear on you. Some of these Larry Lowballs, these guys that you just find at Home Depot, their phone number is going to be changed next week, or they're not going to return your phone call, or they may just be somewhat loose cannons, if you will, and may be willing to do all kinds of crazy stuff. I've had contractors break in my house and kick a hole in the wall because they were angry at me. I've had another contractor punch a window, a glass window. Luckily, it didn't break and there was no damage, but he could have really hurt himself. But typically, your Henry high dollars, they tend to be a little bit more professional. They're a lot more accountable, but their price is not necessarily the cheapest. I have Henry high dollars that I work with. I have a wife, 4 kids, and several businesses. So sometimes I just want to pick up the phone, know that it's done, not have to go there, stand over his shoulder, make sure he's doing it. And I know that if something goes wrong, I can call him next week and he's going to be there. So that's Henry the high dollar. And then one other type that I want to share is what I call Starving Marvin. Marvin tends to be struggling for money and he doesn't conduct business very well. Thus, he thinks all money is good. So he's going to tell you whatever he needs to tell you to get some money in his pocket today. But he tends not to be all that accountable. Now, just know that while his price may be low, his level of quality may be good, may not. Just depends. I remember I had one job I was doing once at one of my rent houses, and the contractor walked the job. I went to pick up rent in another house, which was one street over. And there was a guy, and he looked like he did construction. I said, hey, man, you want some work? He said, yeah. We walked one street over. I don't remember the numbers, but let's say the other contractor was going to charge me $2,000. He said I would do this work for $500. I was like, man, this is great. Now, I knew going in, this was maybe, I don't know, it wasn't my first or second property, so I was kind of learning the game. So I knew going in, okay, he very well likely may not be able to complete this job. He also, in my mind, is probably, I'm going to have to keep following up with him. I'm going to have to wonder where he's at. He's going to be taking extended lunch break. I knew that going in, but my mind says, okay, I'm going to have to put more time into this job. But if the other guy was going to charge me $2,000, he's going to charge me $500, then it'll be worth it. I'm saving $1,500. Now, this particular job, the guy was wonderful. He was on point, did a great job, and I actually gave him a little bit extra. Even though I owed him $500, I gave him $800. Why? Once again, I'm trying to build relationships, and I knew my budget was $2,000. I'm paying $800. I'm still $1,200 below budget. Now, I know that may go against everything that many of you are taught in real estate. You got to make every dime. And yes, I want to make every dime. But I'm not thinking about the dimes I can make here. I'm thinking about the dimes I can make next week when that client calls and my number one contractor is tied up over here and I need someone that I can rely on that's going to get the job done. Now, if you're just doing one job here and there, maybe that doesn't work for you. If your budget is extremely tight, like I said, there have been times when my budget was extremely tight, and if they tell me $500, I'm trying to get $450. I had another situation that I can share with you where I had a guy come in. He was doing some sheetrock and painting work for me. And sheetrock and painting, that can be a subjective thing. Sometimes the paint job is only as good as the prep. So if you have nails in the wall, you got to put caulk in there. You got to cover those holes before you paint it. So this guy was halfway doing everything. And I kept following him around. Hey, you missed this, you missed that, you missed that. And the guy looks at me and says, hey man, give me a break. This is a lot of work. Now, ultimately, I had to let the guy go, didn't pay him all of his money because he didn't complete the task. When he left, I flushed my toilet. My toilet starts overflowing. I call a plumber. The plumber opens the lines up and there were rags that were stuffed in there. So he was upset with me and decided he was gonna jack my plumbing up. It's all part of the business. But at the end of the day, that property is rented right now and I'm getting a check every month. So with real estate and investing, you always gotta look at the big picture. Now, so the number one thing that you need to know when you're dealing with a contractor, look for integrity. Like I say, I am a contractor right now. So there have been times where I told the client $5,000 and then parameters change and I have to charge them $5,500. Now, they have a choice at that point. Say no, and I will let them know I can't continue on because I can't operate at a deficit. Or I could say yes and operate at a deficit if I know I'm gonna get more jobs or things of that nature, but that's really up to me. But ultimately, it's about integrity. That's why for me, I wanna build relationships. I wanna trust that person. I want them to trust me so that we can build a better working relationship, all with the understanding that ultimately they're trying to get as much money as they can, but guess what? So am I. So that doesn't make it wrong. So just understand that going in. Now, if you're like my friend that I share from up north, if anybody takes anything, if they take $1 more from you than they're supposed to, then they need to be strung up and they getting over on you, then hey, have at it. But for me, I've done that. I've argued with the contractors. I've had holes kicked in my wall. I've had rags put in my plumbing. But I like to keep more of a better working relationship because I just want to lower my stress levels. I also want to make sure that I can make money in the future. And I need these guys available when I pick up the phone and call. Now, when is the job done right? Okay, as I say, one of my favorite sayings, I say it in almost every masterclass, there's more than one way to skin a cat. So if you don't understand construction, let's go back to the roof and shingle job I told you about. Early on, if you would have just put shingles on that roof, I would have thought the job was done right. The roof wasn't leaking anymore. But now I know that if you got rotten wood under there, the wood needs to be replaced before you put the shingles on. So was the job done right? If you hire someone to put on shingles and they only put on shingles, you could say the job was done right. But if you don't know enough, now when I work with contractors, I say I need a new roof. They give me their price, $3,000. Okay, now you know it's probably some rotten wood under there and you're gonna have to replace them rafters. I ain't trying to go up on my price. Sometimes they may say, okay, yeah, I'm gonna take care of all that for $3,000. Sometimes they may say, okay, it's gonna be $3,300 if we're gonna have to replace the wood. Now you go back and forth. But at the end of the day, you gotta know what your budget is and determine if that's a fair price or not, okay? And then last thing I'll say there, I have one of my mentors, he's probably the best worker contractor that I know. If you hire him to put in a faucet, let's say if you get a faucet at Home Depot, you put that faucet in according to the instructions, you put them in, you screw them down, you connect the water lines and you turn it on and the water comes out. Is that job done right? The water's working. You did it according to the instructions. Well, my friend, my contractor would say that's a half done job, you know? Why? Because what he knows is that when you have a sink, you have water, you have moisture, that can kind of seep in. It'll mess up the particle board. It can mess up the sheetrock. So what does he do? He puts a thin layer of caulk around it before he places it down. Now, is that a better job? Yes. But is it right? Yes. But if you don't put the caulk on, is that wrong? Well, it really just depends. If you have the level of knowledge he does, and I do, you may consider it wrong. But then what you got to do is you got to tell that contractor, this is what I expect. But if you don't know any better, he puts it in, it's working. By the time the wood rots, that's 4 or 5 years down the line. And that's the way I think. I'm thinking down the line. So sometimes you may spend a little bit more money on the front end, but because our strategy is long-term rental investments, that kind of guides the strategy that we use in terms of dealing with these contractors and the construction that we do. So now let's talk about the rehab. Here's an actual house that I bought. You can see it looks pretty rough, but at the end of the day, it's structurally sound. You can see what it looks like when it's done. So the first thing that I look for when I go out to look at a property, I want to make sure it's structurally sound. Now, once again, it's not that cute, but it's functional. The exterior is fine. And I'll pause right here. I also, first thing I do is I look to the left, I look to the right, and I look across the street. If there's a pit bull tied to a stake right next door and an empty lot with tires and junk cars there, now I know that it's probably going to be more difficult for me to rent. I know that it's probably going to be more vermins and rodents and things of that nature. And I just kind of know what I'm dealing with going in. Not saying that I wouldn't buy it. Someone told me that there's no problem that a proper price reduction can't cure. So, but just know your environment. But so I'm looking for a sound structure. Now, if the structure is not sound, let's say the house is leaning to the side. Once again, I'm not saying I won't buy it, but that's going to affect the price that I'm willing to pay. Now, let's look at also the outside. You got your windows, they're functional. The doors, the siding, and the roof. All of that's functional. Now, how do I know that? Of course, I was on site. I actually bought this one, didn't do anything on the exterior, just painted it. I replaced the roof about 3 years in. And then this year, I replaced all the siding, the windows, and repainted it to make it look like the picture that you see there. But I had a tenant in there paying me money, building my wealth, and ultimately the repairs were paid for by the tenant. So now let's move on to the inside. The sheetrock. So if they're just holes in the sheetrock, you can patch that and fix it pretty easily, okay? The flooring for this particular house is not the cutest, but it was functional. It worked. This was one of my first properties. My capital was low. I just wanted to get it up and rolling. Cabinets and counters, they were functional. Matter of fact, I still have the same cabinets and counters in that house now. We replaced the counters initially because it was broken, but the cabinets are still there and it's functional. Not the cutest, but it's functional and it makes money. Now, this was what I did early on. Now, because my strategy is long term, what I tend to do, I want to do more work on the front end. So I'm going to gut that house. I'm going to tear it down to the studs and I'm going to replace the electrical. I'm going to replace the plumbing. Why? Because 50 years ago, they didn't have iPads and video games and everybody had a phone and then the flat screen TV. So now, if you don't upgrade the plumbing, the breaker's gonna trip. You're gonna have all kinds of issues here and there. So I replaced the plumbing, I replaced the electrical, because I know that it's gonna cause me less headaches in the long run. And if I'm already there doing the work, why not go ahead and do it right on the front end? It may cost me an extra $3,000-$4,000, but it's gonna make me more money in the long run. Now, remember what I said. I've put Band-Aids on stuff, got tenants in there, and just made my money before. And that was because that was where I was at. I didn't have the capital, and I also didn't have the knowledge to know what to do and when. So let's take another example. Your underground plumbing, your drain lines. If you have one person living in a house and the drain line is broke, you can flush the toilet and you will seemingly have no problem because it's one full toilet flush at a time. But if you have a husband, a wife, and 4 kids, and one person's taking a bath, another person's flushing the toilet, the washer's running, and somebody's doing dishes, and all that water's draining at once, it's gonna start to back up. So while I know it may be a broken drain line, early on, I didn't really know to fix that, but I also didn't have the capital. So when they would call and say, such and such is backing up, I would just go out and fix it. Now, because I know it's a potential issue, I may invest the extra $4,000 or $5,000 to dig the lines up, make sure it's done right, because I don't want those calls in the future. And when you do stuff like electrical, plumbing, you're improving the value of your property. So all right. So before we get to our last point, I want to share one quick message. Did you know that 30% of people who set goals will actually accomplish those goals? The reason I'm sharing that, you've watched more than 70% of this program, which means that you're head and shoulders above the average. And I know you're serious about building your wealth in real estate. But the truth of the matter is, while there's a lot of good information that I'm providing, nothing compares to being able to pick up the phone and call someone that's been there, done that, and is willing to help you through the process. So for a limited time only, I'm going to allow you to book a consulting call with me. There's a link in the description that you can book a call with me, 1 hour, and I'll walk you through whatever it is you need. I'll answer whatever questions you have, which I believe is irreplaceable. When I started my business, I had a mentor. He helped me with whatever I need, and I wanted to be able to do the same for you. Also, get the book, Closing the Wealth Gap. This has so much more information and detailed information that I'm not able to go through to this course, but you can get it on Amazon. There's also a link in the bio or in the description below. And if you're in the Houston area, check out our own on-site, on-location prospecting. You can book me. I'll come out. I'll assess your house. I'll help you meet with the contractors. So many resources that I think would be necessary that will help you in building wealth in real estate. Now, lastly, you may be feeling a little overwhelmed, and you may say growing my wealth in real estate may be kind of far-fetched, but that's normal. I want you to check out this message from one of my top mentees, Mr. Onaje Barnes. He started out with me. He started out with one single family house, and he's now on his 3rd apartment complex. Check out his story, and then we'll be right on to the next point. The one conversation I remember is we was talking about buying a house, and I was saying, every time I have a kid, I'm going to buy a house, and that's going to be my college fund. Yeah. You said, man, that's the same way, you know.
Yeah, that was exactly how I started. Process. Yeah. I mean, that literally was my mindset. But literally, we started from just a simple aspect of, one, we used our first home as an investment property. If you buy right up front, right? And real estate 101 is we make our money when we buy, right? That's real estate 101, right? And so for me, I wanted to use that same mentality on our first house, which we did. I got a great loan on that first house.
I remember. I was your realtor.
I remember somebody was my realtor. Right. So we did buy a foreclosure, got a good deal on it, put some sweat equity into it, put some, we put some money into it. It was listed for 180. My pretty good dope realtor, he was able to negotiate 135, and I put about 35 into it, so I'm like all in for like 160, 165, somewhere around there. And within like 6 months, we had a $240,000 appraisal. So I got that cash out early, and you were like, hey, I got these deals. I got, maybe she'll sell you 4 of them. I'm like, okay. I looked at 4 or 5 of them, and I was like, okay, I want a couple of these or whatever. And I'm like, man, what can I get them for? He's like, well, you can't get into them. I was like, well, man, I can't walk them into the property. Like, I can't pay full price. He's like, all right, cool. We'll figure it out. Blah blah. So we got those houses for $16,500 each. Yeah. So it was 2 of them. But long story short, I'm renting them for $1,350 now.
Wow.
Right. And that's probably still on the market. Yeah. So I'm renting them for $1,350. I did do a cash out refi because I'm a burst strategy guy. So I did a cash out refi about 3 years ago. Pulled $100,000 from both of them.
Whoa.
Pulled $100,000 from both of them. So to bring it a little bit home, that 21 unit complex that you toured, I bought that with the $200,000 from the 2 deals.
So last thing I'll say is some people, I've actually been called a slumlord, believe it or not, by my tenants, of course. No one else calls me a slumlord, because sometimes tenants tend to think that your goal or your role is to fix and do whatever it is they say or that you want them to do. But from my perspective, a slumlord is a person that provides an unsafe or an unsanitary living condition from individuals. So when I've been called slumlords, it's been a lot of times with rodents, with insects. Now, mind you, when I give a personal property, I completely redo it. It's a brand new house. I exterminate it. There are no roaches. There are no rodents when they move in the house. So if they don't keep the property up to par and there are roaches and there are rodents, that's up to them to get it exterminated and take care of that. So as a landlord, you got to make sure you have all of that spelled out in your lease, the expectations, and your goal and your role is not to fix and do everything that they want you to do. But also, you got to understand there are people out there that their business model is to put Band-Aids on everything, put the tenants in there, knowing that stuff isn't functioning properly. And when the tenant calls, they ignore those calls. That's not the way we operate. And that's not the way I suggest that you operate. Because at the core of the Black Money Tree, we are trying to build the community, not to tear down, not to take from the community. Yes, you need to make your money, but your tenants need a quality place to live. So if it's not a place that you will want your mom, your sister, or yourself to live in, why would you try to give it to someone else? Now, last point I will say on that too. You can't impose your standards on other people. My first home I bought, it didn't have any central air and heat. Now, I've lived in only one house when I was really little that didn't have central air and heat. But I've never lived in a home without central air and heat. So for me, that's normal. But in the communities where many of my properties are located, having window units is normal. So initially, I felt like, hey, I need to put central air and heat in. But when I looked at the economics of it, at the end of the day, it's about the bottom line. I spent $5,000 to put the central air and heat system in. Most of the tenants aren't going to replace the filter, so there's going to be issues with it. There's going to be at least 1 or 2 more service calls per year. Let's say that's $100 a pop. That's $200 more a month that's going to cost me, plus the $5,000 that I spent to put it in. And for what? To get another $100 in rent? So let's do the math. If I get another $100 in rent, that's $1,200 a month. I've spent $5,000 for the unit. So it takes me just short of 5 years to make my money back. You add in the maintenance costs, it's probably closer to 5.5 years. And by that time, you're going to have the condensers froze up or something's going to be messed up because the tenant isn't going to take care of it. And now you're going to have to drop another $2,000, $3,000 to get it repaired and get it fixed. So for me, I stopped putting central air units in my properties because a window unit is a lot more cost efficient and it cools the house properly. And those within that community are fine with it. They're okay with it. It's not unsafe. It's not unsanitary. It may not be what I'm accustomed to, but it's fine for that community. All right. So now you got a handle on the types of contractors out there and the ways in which to negotiate with them. Now you need to know, how do you manage the tenant? The tenant is going to be critically important, and the way you manage the tenant is writing a powerful lease. So you got to set the rules of the engagement, and that is in the next masterclass. I'll give you different disclosures, ways to manage the repairs, and all kinds of stuff. So make sure you tune in to the next masterclass, which is all about writing the lease and managing the tenant. And before you go, subscribe, like, don't be selfish, share this with someone else. And if you want to book a one-on-one consulting call, click on the description link in the bio.